Welcome to the good ride, where it's not about this lad's pride, it's just about how it rides. And this is the Never Summer Valhalla. Next to it is the Proto Freeride, and next to that is the Cougar, and we'll get into how all three of these ride in a little bit. So I rode this primarily with my Ride Fuse and my Union Atlas, but I also got a little time on the Burton Kendo. I got this in a wide variety of conditions, everything from some decent powder to good groomers and a little bit of stuff in between. I often compared this same day to the Proto Freeride, the Cougar, the Never Summer Swift, and the Shapeshifter, just to get an idea of how this board sits on the Never Summer spectrum. So when it comes to sizing, the 156 Valhalla felt pretty good. I think I could go 162. I feel like I'm in between sizes with both of these, where the Proto Freeride in a 160 felt a little too big, and the Never Summer Cougar in a 156 felt just right. So when it comes to shape, this sits in between the shape of the Proto Freeride and Cougar, which have the same shape, and the Never Summer Swift. It's kind of in between those two. It still doesn't feel that set back on board. It has a very centered feel when you're set up on reference. It's got camber just between the bindings. Then it starts going to rocker, then to a mellow camber with a little bit of early rise before the nose. And this feels like a more stable version of their old rocker and camber profile, but it feels just a touch loose. It's easier to 1 foot and flat base. When it gets hard, you can feel all the different camber profiles kind of interacting with the snow a little bit, and it can be a little hooky, a little catchy, but nowhere near as catchy as full camber. The Proto Freeride has the same camber profile and had a similar feeling, just a little more centered, a little less tapered, a little less set back. But the Cougar has only passive triple camber bends near the bindings as the camber goes up, and it feels semi-locked in, really stable, really easy to 1 foot and flat base. Not that hard to skid a turn, but definitely a little bit more on the technical side of stable. A strong intermediate to advanced rider, expert rider could ride the Cougar, but the Proto Freeride and the Valhalla will work with any ability level, and it just takes a little time to get used to. Now let's talk flex here. This is a really stiff flex. You can hear that cracking. There's nothing wrong with that board. I'm just not a strong enough rider to break it in. The nose is a little softer than the flex between the feet, and the tail has a little bit more give. It's more this camber profile where the bend starts by the bindings that allows this to flex a little easier there, but overall, it's a pretty stiff flex. Now, next up, I'm gonna do the Cougar. You can see it's got a little more mellow flex, a little more give in the tail, and a little softer nose, but a medium stiff flex right here between the feet. And this has just lots of pop. I love this construction. It's very similar to the Valhallas. And the Proto Freeride has a slightly different construction, slightly different top sheet. It's a little more damp, but it still has a similar flex to the Cougar. The Cougar was the best when it comes to pop. It was just so easy to access that pop. That board felt really lively. The Proto Freeride definitely felt like it was the most work to access the pop inside it. And then the Valhalla felt similar to the Cougar, but it just had a camber profile that it was a little more tricky to find where the board pops, because this camber profile between the feet, if you just tried to engage that, didn't give a lot of pop, so you would have to lean back into the tail or lean forward into the nose and get that to pop. That's how it popped a little more. It's still a pretty poppy board for this camber profile, but I definitely preferred the Cougar out of all three of these. That thing's just a pop genius. It pops like it's full camber. And all three of these were easy to butter. Even the Cougar, I felt like it buttered really well in the tip and tail. The Proto Freeride was pretty doable too, especially with that pre-bent area near the bindings where you could lean into it already and get a little extra leverage. Same with the Valhalla. The Valhalla was, I think, a little easier than the Proto Freeride. Despite this super stiff flex there, I could lean back and butter this up. When it comes to how the Valhalla's flex personality handles uneven snow, it does an amazing job. Hard micro bumpy snow, soft, wet, messy snow, does great. Proto Freeride's a little better, it's a little more damp, but Never Summer as a company is just above most brands at finding a balance between being poppy and damp. The Cougar is definitely more poppy than all of these, and about a little less damp than the Valhalla because it's just not as stiff, but all of these are great all-day rides. When it comes to speed and pointing it, the Valhalla felt more turny and less straight-liney than the Proto Freeride and the Cougar, but it's close. When it comes to base glide, I love Never Summer bases. On snow, this base has exceptional glide. It's up there. Some of my favorite bases are like Gentum Stick, Jones, Cardiff Snowcraft. Never Summer feels like it's in that realm. It's maybe not quite as fast, but pretty close, and I always get great base glide with all of these. Now, when it comes to grip, with the Proto Freeride and the Valhalla, grips really well in hard snow. It's not full on like some of the major disrupted side cuts like Magna Traction or some of the underbite technology from Yes, but it's close. And I found that when I hit hard snow with triple camber technology like the Proto Freeride and the Valhalla here, it did a great job. It really held well. The Cougar was maybe a touch behind, but still such confident grip. Never Summer always does a good job when it comes down to getting a board to grip in hard to icy snow. Now, when it comes to turn initiation, this Valhalla is really quick. I felt like it was faster edge to edge in the same size as the 156 Cougar. This 60 Proto Freeride felt slow for me, but if I had gotten this in a 156, it would have felt almost the same as the Cougar because it's the same shape and same side cut. You're turning more from the middle and there's less width, so it'll initiate a turn a little faster. Then you go to the Valhalla. When I got it over on edge, I felt like this could turn a tighter radius. The side cut's just a little less turny with the Cougar and Proto Freeride. This is a little more slashy, just a little bit more on the surfy side of Freeride. But here's the thing, when I wanted to carve really hard, I didn't feel like this new triple camber technology had the spring out of the turn in comparison to Ripsaw, Shockwave, and the Never Summer Cougar with a camber dominant triple camber. This camber between the feet sometimes fights your ability to get to the camber and the tip and tail. When I went for a center weighted turn on Good Groomers, it worked pretty well, but this seemed to like a more back foot weighted carve better than the Cougar and the Proto Freeride. And I really had to lean back into that camber to get it to pop out. But I felt like Shockwave, Ripsaw, and this new triple camber technology with the Cougar, that's hands down my favorite. I just get so much more spring out of the turn than I do triple camber technology. Now, when it comes to powder, I felt like the Valhalla, it's definitely better than the Proto Freeride and the Cougar. Felt more turny, more slashy. With the Cougar, I felt like the float was good, but it wasn't amazing. Felt like a good all mountain board. Not that great for a freeride board. Now, the Proto Freeride, I felt floated a little better than the Cougar, but not by that much. At a 21.75 inch stance width, set all the way back with full-size discs, you can get 4 inches back from center of board. I wouldn't have guessed that. It felt more centered to me than that, but that's kind of a Never Summer thing, and I think it's because they're very Colorado-centric, so they ride a lot of lighter powder that doesn't need a lot of setback. Riding this out at Mount Bachelor, where we can get some thicker powder, I felt like I could use a little bit more setback on board, but overall, it's got good directional float, and I think you could have a pretty good time with this if this was your only board for groomers and for powder. It's right there with most freeride boards. So overall, the Cougar really tickled my taint this year. That was the board I couldn't stop thinking about. But I would say if you want a forgiving ride with more grip and a little more directional float, this could work.